What happens when the quietest girl in school, the one you overlook, becomes the only person you can't ignore? Every school has that one kid, the one who melts into the walls, who doesn't talk unless spoken to, who seems almost ghost-like in the cafeteria line or school assemblies. At Toledo Central Middle School, that was Nevaeh Forrester. Nevaeh always sat in the same spot, back row, fifth seat from the window in room 112. Her posture never changed. Back straight, knees close, and a battered old violin case clutched like porcelain between them. She rarely made eye contact. She spoke even less. Teachers called her shy. Some kids called her weird. A few even called her invisible. But none of them, not even Nevaeh herself, knew she was about to become unforgettable. It all started on a Thursday morning when the school gym reeked of old sweat and fresh wax. Coach Buckley, the PE teacher, who somehow always found himself in charge of anything fun, stood in front of the class with a clipboard and a fake smile. "All right, y'all," he barked, his voice bouncing off the squeaky gym floor. "Talent shows Friday next week. We've got open slots, singers, dancers, magicians, whatever weirdness you've been hiding, now's the time." Half the room chuckled. The other half barely looked up. But then came the moment Nevaeh would never forget. Miss Dorsey, the math teacher, with an obsession for beige cardigans and passive-aggressive smiles, nudged Buckley's arm and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "What about our little violinist in the back? She's been carrying that thing all year. Might as well show us what it actually does." The laughter wasn't cruel. Not immediately. It started like a wave building in the back, small, almost harmless. Then it grew. Kids whispered. Someone made a screeching sound like a dying cat. Another mimed playing a violin with exaggerated flair. Even Coach Buckley gave a light-hearted chuckle. But Nevaeh didn't. Her fingers tightened on the neck of her case. She didn't look up. Not even when Dorsey added, "Just teasing, sweetheart. Unless you're up for it." And that's when she said it, without raising her voice, without even blinking. "I'll do it." The room froze. Even the air seemed to pause. Coach Buckley raised an eyebrow. "You serious?" Nevaeh didn't answer. She didn't need to. She just unlatched her violin case, slid it across the desk, and wrote her name down on the clipboard being passed around. Nevaeh Forrester, slot 16. That night, Nevaeh didn't eat dinner. Not because she wasn't hungry, but because nerves made food feel like lead in her stomach. She sat on the floor of apartment 3C, her violin resting gently against her shoulder. The room was quiet except for her music. No headphones, no amps, just sound, raw and imperfect. Her little brother Miles watched her from the doorway, a bowl of cereal in his hand. "You gonna win?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "It's not about winning." "Then why do it?" He frowned. Nevaeh thought for a moment. Then she glanced at the ceiling, where a damp stain spread like a shadow. I just want them to hear me." Nevaeh's violin wasn't fancy. It had scratches on the side and the E string buzzed if she pressed too hard. The bow was frayed at the tip like a chewed shoelace, and the pegs slipped sometimes. But when she played, it sang, it wept, it screamed, it whispered. She had started learning when she was 7. Her grandfather, who passed away 2 years later, taught her everything he knew, how to let the instrument speak when words felt too heavy. He'd always told her, "Play your truth, baby girl. When they don't listen to your voice, let them listen to your soul." So that's what she practiced. She didn't choose a song from TikTok. She didn't play Mozart or something cute like "Mary Had a Little Lamb." She composed her own piece, half blues, half classical, all pain. It didn't have a name because it didn't need one. The buzz around school started building by Monday. "Did you hear?" Nevaeh signed up. "That violin girl? She even talk? She probably gonna play hot cross buns and cry." Even the teachers weren't subtle. In the staff room, Miss Dorsey raised an eyebrow when she saw Nevaeh's name on the list. "Who signed her up?" "She did," said Miss Tran, the art teacher. "She has a right." "Right, sure," Dorsey muttered. "But not everyone should, set themselves up like that." "Maybe she'll surprise you," Miss Tran replied, eyes never leaving her crossword puzzle. By Thursday, bets were circulating. Some said Nevaeh would freeze on stage. Others said she'd cry before playing a note. A few gave her the benefit of the doubt, but still laughed behind her back. Only one person spoke to her directly. Malik, a piano player in 7th grade who practiced alone after school, caught her near the library. "You playing original?" She blinked. He smiled. "Good. Make it something they can't compare." She didn't smile back, but she nodded, and that was enough. Friday came like thunder. The gym was packed. Folding chairs scraped the floor. The mic whined. The lights were too bright and the air too thick. A singer went first, then a dancer, then a kid who told knock-knock jokes. Some acts bombed, some didn't. But everyone was waiting for one thing. Slot 16. Nevaeh sat behind the curtain, tapping her fingers on the wood of her violin. She wasn't scared, not exactly, but she was warm. Her fingers were stiff. Her mouth was dry. They called her name uncertainly. Nevaeh Forrester." The applause was weak. One clap, then two. A few shoes squeaked as people shifted. Some students giggled. Someone whispered, "She gonna choke." Nevaeh stood like she was being lifted by strings. She walked to the center of the stage. No microphone, no intro, just her. She placed the violin on her shoulder, bow in hand. Then silence. Coach Buckley cleared his throat. Miss Dorsey leaned forward, already smirking. Then came the first note. It trembled, thin, small, uncertain. But then came the second, then the third. And by the fifth note, the entire gymnasium was still. Nevaeh's bow danced. The notes wept, then howled, then whispered like secrets being confessed into a night sky. Her fingers moved like she was possessed, bending strings into memories, bending pain into melody. Her eyes stayed closed, not from fear, but because she no longer needed them. By the time she hit the final crescendo, the air itself felt like it was holding its breath. And when it was over, when the last note faded into silence like a dream unraveling, she didn't move, didn't bow, didn't smile. She just stood there, violin pressed to her chest like a heartbeat. And for a moment, just a moment, no one remembered how to speak. Then one clap, then another. Then everyone stood. Even the ones who laughed, even the ones who bet against her, even the ones who never learned her name. There's a strange kind of quiet that happens after a storm. Not peace exactly, but something heavier, like everyone's still waiting for the next flash of lightning, even when the sky's gone clear. That's what the gym felt like after Nevaeh Forrester walked off that stage. No fireworks, no high fives, no tears. She just carried her violin in both hands and disappeared behind the curtain, her shoulders still and her steps measured. Coach Buckley stood by the side of the stage, mouth slightly open, clutching his clipboard like a raft. He blinked like he was trying to remember what just happened. Ms. Tran, who had come to support the art club's 2 acts, was already on her feet clapping, eyes gleaming behind her glasses. Miss Dorsey remained seated. Her hands rested in her lap. She didn't clap. She didn't speak. She just watched. Backstage, Nevaeh sat alone in the corner, cradling her violin like a child. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying either. She was calm. Buckley peeked around the curtain. "Hey, he started, then cleared his throat. Good job out there." Nevaeh simply nodded. He hesitated like he wanted to say more, maybe even apologize, but instead turned and walked off, his shoes squeaking faintly on the polished wood floor. At lunch the following Monday, the cafeteria felt different. It always smelled the same, pizza with a side of overcooked broccoli, but the way people looked at Nevaeh had shifted. Slightly, subtly, but it was there. Some students glanced her way and quickly looked down. A few whispered. One girl with pink braids from science class actually nodded at her. It was the kind of nod you give someone who did something you didn't expect and couldn't stop thinking about. And then there was Malik. He slid into the seat across from her, placing a chocolate milk carton on her tray without a word. "Next time," he said quietly, "we do a duet." Nevaeh raised an eyebrow. "You're not ready," she deadpanned, just loud enough for him to hear. He broke into a grin. That was the first time someone at school had ever heard her crack a joke. Later that day, Nevaeh passed Miss Dorsey in the hallway. She was standing outside room 203, arms crossed, a stack of quizzes in her hand. Their eyes met. Dorsey didn't say anything, not at first. Then, as Nevaeh began to walk past, she spoke. Forrester. Nevaeh stopped. I owe you an apology, Dorsey said. What I said last week, it wasn't fair. I made assumptions. That was wrong. There was a pause. Nevaeh could have said something sharp, something pointed. She could have asked, would you have apologized if I had messed up? But instead, she just looked her teacher in the eye and said, you should have seen me before Friday. Dorsey blinked, and Nevaeh kept walking. At home, the violin case stayed closed that night, not because Nevaeh was done, but because for the first time, she didn't need to prove anything to anyone, not to her classmates, not to her teachers, not even to herself. She curled up on the couch beside Miles, who was watching cartoons. Not practicing tonight? Her mom asked gently, drying her hands on a dish towel. Nevaeh looked up, thought for a moment. I'm okay. Monica Forrester smiled and crossed the room. She sat on the couch, looped her arm around her daughter, and pulled her close. I hope they remember, she whispered into Nevaeh's hair. Nevaeh didn't answer, because she knew some would, and some never could. The next few days brought more small moments. People held doors open for her. One kid actually asked what kind of strings she used. Even Mr. Jennings, the assistant principal, smiled and said, Heard you brought the house down. Sorry I missed it. It wasn't fame. It wasn't popularity. It was recognition, respect. The kind that comes not because you demand it, but because you earn it, even when no one was paying attention. But not everyone was comfortable with the shift. During fourth period, Coach Buckley stood outside his office with his usual clipboard. His brows were furrowed and his posture tense. When Miss Tran passed by, she asked, You all right? He hesitated. It's nothing. Just didn't expect her to be that good, you know? She's been good, Tran replied. You just didn't notice. He scratched his chin. Still, she made us all look a little dumb. Or maybe, Miss Tran said gently, she made us look closer. By Friday, whispers of the performance had reached even the district office. An assistant superintendent called the school, asking if there was a recording. There was. Multiple students had filmed it on their phones. One video, posted anonymously, had already hit 5,000 views on TikTok under the caption, The joke was on them. Nevaeh didn't mention it to anyone. She didn't care about going viral. She barely used her phone outside of texting her mom and looking up violin tutorials. But she saw the comments. I thought it was going to be a joke. Now I'm crying. This girl played like the violin owed her money. Why is this not in a movie yet? She scrolled in silence, then powered her phone off. Some things didn't need a screen to be felt. That weekend, Monica took Nevaeh and Miles to the community park. The sun was soft. The breeze smelled like spring. They spread a blanket near the fountain. Miles kicked a ball around with some kids, while Monica pulled out sandwiches from a brown paper bag. You want to play here? Monica asked, motioning to the small stage nearby. Nevaeh shook her head. I don't need to. And that was true. She didn't need the crowd. She didn't need the applause. She just needed the music. That night, after Miles had fallen asleep with peanut butter on his cheek, Nevaeh stood by the window, violin tucked beneath her chin. She played quietly, just for herself. No spotlight, no one watching. The melody was slower now, softer, full of things she couldn't say out loud. She didn't notice her mother standing in the doorway, arms folded, tears catching in the corners of her eyes. When the song ended, Monica spoke. You know what your grandfather used to say? Nevaeh smiled. Play the truth when you can't speak it. Exactly. Monica crossed the room and pulled her daughter into a hug. Baby, she whispered, I hope the world never stops listening. By Monday morning, the energy around Nevaeh Forrester had shifted again. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was more like gravity, quiet but undeniable. Students who once ignored her now stepped aside in the hallway. Some offered quick nods. A few even attempted smiles. One girl whispered to her friend, She's like famous now. But Nevaeh didn't walk any differently. She still clutched her violin case tightly, still wore the same scuffed sneakers, still sat in her usual seat, fifth row, last desk by the window. Except now, silence followed her, not out of dismissal, but out of curiosity and sometimes guilt. During third period math, Miss Dorsey stood by the whiteboard, marker in hand. She paused mid-equation and turned to face the class. "Before we continue, I want to acknowledge something," she said, glancing toward Nevaeh, who blinked, surprised. The class fell still. "I judged one of you unfairly last week," Dorsey said, "and I want to say I was wrong." Gasps. A few heads turned. Dorsey didn't flinch. "I assumed what someone could or couldn't do based on nothing, and it won't happen again." Nevaeh stared at her, not in anger, just clarity. Then she nodded once. Nothing more. Dorsey exhaled, turned back to the board, and resumed the equation like nothing had happened. But her hand trembled slightly as she wrote. In the lunchroom, Malik slid into the seat across from Nevaeh again. "You made her apologize in front of the whole class," he whispered, impressed. "I didn't think Dorsey even had tear ducts." Nevaeh cracked a small smile and peeled the wrapper from her sandwich. "She's learning." "You think she really means it?" She paused, then shrugged. "That's not on me." He laughed, shaking his head. "You really are different now." "No," Nevaeh said simply. "I'm the same. You're all just listening." That afternoon, Principal Jenkins called her into the office. "Nothing bad," the secretary said quickly. "She just wants a word." When Nevaeh stepped inside, Principal Jenkins was seated behind her wide desk, framed by dusty trophy cases and motivational posters that hadn't been updated since 2009. But her expression was warm. "Nevaeh," she said, gesturing to the seat, "I wanted to thank you. You gave our school something beautiful." Nevaeh didn't respond. She wasn't used to compliments without strings. Jenkins continued, "You've inspired a lot of students. The board wants to highlight your performance at next month's district assembly. Maybe even get you a scholarship lead or two." "I didn't do it for that," Nevaeh said quietly. "I know," Jenkins replied, "and that's exactly why it matters." That night, Nevaeh found a folded note in her locker. No name, just 3 words, scrawled in blue ink. "I heard you." She didn't know who wrote it. She didn't need to. Later, back home, Miles plopped beside her on the couch as she tightened the fraying bow on her violin. "When's the next show?" he asked, grinning. "Don't know," she said. "Soon, maybe. Can I come?" "You already did," she said with a smirk. "You just fell asleep before the good part." He giggled and leaned his head against her arm. "You gonna play the sad song again?" "No," Nevaeh whispered, tapping the bow to his shoulder like a sword. "Next time, I'll play something loud." A week later, something unexpected happened. An invitation came from the local arts conservatory, a scholarship audition with Nevaeh's name on it. Someone, maybe Ms. Tran, maybe Jenkins, had submitted the footage. Nevaeh stared at the letter for a long time. Then she folded it carefully and placed it inside her violin case, right next to the frayed cloth she used to wipe the strings. On the final Friday of the semester, Toledo Central held a school-wide assembly. The gym was full again. Same chairs, same echoes. But something was different. This time the principal introduced Nevaeh by name. This time people clapped before she even played. Nevaeh walked out with the same battered violin. But when she looked up this time, she saw faces filled not with doubt, but with hope. She stood in the same spotlight, took the same breath, and played something new. It started low, then swelled like sunlight spilling through blinds. Her bow moved quicker. Her fingers danced lighter. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was joy. It was flight. And when it ended, the applause was immediate, louder than last time. But Nevaeh didn't bow. She didn't smile. She just looked up, her eyes meeting the rafters of the gym ceiling, like she was seeing something no one else could. Outside the school, a local reporter stopped Nevaeh and her mom by the parking lot. "Can I ask just one question?" the reporter said, breathless, holding a mic. Nevaeh tilted her head. The woman smiled and asked, "What would you say to the people who once laughed at you?" Nevaeh paused. Then she looked directly into the camera and said calmly, "I hope they're listening now." According to Dr. Aisha Raymond, professor of child psychology and educational equity at Northwestern University, Nevaeh's story is both inspiring and alarmingly common. "We underestimate quiet students," she says, "especially black girls. We label them shy or unengaged without considering the reasons they retreat inward, whether it's trauma, cultural erasure, or constant dismissal. Dr. Raymond explains that visibility doesn't always equal confidence. Nevaeh didn't find her voice on stage. She had it the whole time. The tragedy is how long it took the world to stop talking over it. And then she adds, the scariest part? If no one had humiliated her, we may never have known she existed.